Hello, and this is Delia again, and I'm on the Vampire Diaries, The Awakening, Chapter 9. This will be Part 4. Got a phone call a while ago, so I got interrupted. I'm sorry about that, but we'll just continue from here. I didn't. He just showed up like the cavalry in one of those old movies. Defending your honor, said Bonnie. What could be more thrilling? I can think of one or two things, said Meredith. But then maybe Elena's got those covered too. I'll tell you all about it, Elena said, releasing them and stepping back. But first, will you come over to Vicky's house with me? I want to talk to her. You can talk to us while you're dressing and while you're walking and while you're brushing your teeth, for that matter, said Bonnie firmly. And if you leave out one tiny detail, you're going to be facing the Spanish Inquisition. You see, said Meredith archly, all Mr. Tanner's work has paid off. Bonnie now knows the Spanish Inquisition is not a rock group, and Elena was laughing with sheer ebullience as they went up the stairs. Mrs. Bennet looked pale and tired, but invited them in. Vicky's been resting. The doctor said to keep her in bed, she explained with a smile that trembled slightly. Elena, Bonnie, and Meredith crowded into the narrow hallway. Mrs. Bennet tapped lightly at Vicky's door. Vicky, sweetheart, some girls from school to see you. Don't keep her long, she added to Elena, opening the door. We won't, Elena promised. She stepped into a pretty blue and white bedroom, the others right behind her. Vicky was lying in bed, propped upon a pillow, with a powder blue comforter drawn up to her chin. Her face was paper white against it, and her heavy, lidded eyes stared straight ahead. That's how she looked last night, Bonnie whispered. Elena moved to the side of the bed. Vicky, she said softly. Vicky went on staring, but Elena thought her breathing changed slightly. Vicky, can you hear me? It's Elena Gilbert. She glanced uncertainly at Bonnie and Meredith. Looks like they gave her tranquilizers, said Meredith. But Mrs. Bennet hadn't said they'd given her any drugs. Frowning, Elena turned back to the unresponsive girl. Vicky, it's me, Elena. I just wanted to talk to you about last night. I want you to know that I believe you about what happened. Elena ignored the sharp glance Meredith gave her and continued. And I wanted to ask you. No! It was a shriek, raw and piercing, torn from Vicky's throat. The body that had been as still as a wax figure exploded into violent action. Vicky's light brown hair whipped across her cheek as she tossed her head back and forth, and her hands flailed at the empty air. No, no, she screamed. Do something, Bonnie gasped. Mrs. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet. Elena and Meredith were trying to hold Vicky on the bed, and she was fighting them. The shrieking went on and on. The shrieking went on and on. Then suddenly Vicky's mother was beside them, helping to hold her and pushing the others away. What did you do to her? She cried. Vicky clutched at her mother, calming down. But then the heavy lidded eyes glimpsed Elena over Miss Bennet's shoulder. You're part of it. You're evil, she screamed hysterically at Elena. Keep away from me. Elena was dumbfounded. Vicky, I only came to ask. I think you better leave now. Leave us alone, said Miss Bennet, clasping her daughter protectively. Can't you see what you're doing to her? In stunned silence, Elena left the room. Bonnie and Meredith followed. Must be drugs, said Bonnie. Once they were out of the house, she just went completely non-linear. Did you notice her hands? Meredith said to Elena. When we were trying to restrain her, I got hold of one of her hands, and it was cold as ice. Elena shook her head in bewilderment. None of it made sense, but she wouldn't let it spoil her day. She wouldn't. Desperately, she searched her mind for something that would offset the experience, that would allow her to hold on to her happiness. I know, she said, the boarding house. What? I told Stephen to call me today, but why don't we walk over to the boarding house instead? It's not far from here. Only 20-minute walk, said Bonnie. She brightened. Only a 20-minute walk, said Bonnie. She brightened. At least we can finally see that room of his. Why they're walking all the time. Why don't they take a car? Actually, said Elena, I was thinking you two could wait downstairs. Well, I'll only get to see him for a few minutes, she added. defensively as they looked at her. It was odd, perhaps she didn't want to share Stefan with her friends just yet. He was so new to her that he felt almost like a secret. Their knock on the shining oak door was answered by Mrs. Flowers. She was a wrinkled little old gnome of a woman with surprisingly bright black eyes. "You must be Elena," she said. "I saw you and Stefan go out last night, and he told me your name when he came back." "You saw us?" said Elena, startled. "I didn't see you." No, you didn't," said Miss Flowers, and chuckled. "What a pretty girl you are, my dear," she added. "A very pretty girl," and she patted Elena's cheek. "Oh, thank you," said Elena, uneasy. She didn't like the way those bird-like eyes were fixed on her, though, and she looked past Miss Flowers to the stairs. "Is Stefan home?" "He must be, unless he's flown off the roof," said Mrs. Flowers, and she chuckled again. Elena laughed politely. "We'll stay down here with Miss Flowers," said Meredith to Elena, while Bonnie rolled her eyes in random, hiding a grin. Elena nodded and mounted the stairs. Okay, so this is chapter 4. We're going to chapter 5.